Right, okay, we're back for the final part, which has only one topic: vitamin A. Vitamin A, otherwise known as retinol. There's a link there through World Health Organization resource on vitamin A deficiency, which is well worth having a read of. We don't necessarily see this very often in the developed world, but around the world, around something like 250 million children under the age of 6 at risk of vitamin A deficiency, which, unless it's treated, will lead to blindness. So it's a very serious condition worldwide. Blindness in many of these conditions, unfortunately, is effectively a death sentence as well. Okay. There's a phrase, "let food be thy medicine," which is often attributed to the ancient Greek physician Hippocrates, he of the Hippocratic Oath. There's no evidence he actually said this. It's a reasonable proposition, especially in the context of the prevention of deficiency diseases. Night blindness, or deflective dark adaptation, is one issue people have if they don't have enough vitamin A in their diets. People with this condition are unable to adapt to low light conditions. It was known in antiquity, and Hippocrates was claimed to have diagnosed it by asking patients to locate various faint stars. Once diagnosed, he would, it is claimed, recommend they eat liver. Since vitamin D deficiency can lead to night blindness and liver is high in vitamin A, this was good advice. He had obviously no knowledge of vitamin A, so this is presumably based on empirical evidence, or maybe the historical record isn't perhaps as reliable as we would like to think it is. Okay, so vitamin A, retinol. It's a fat-soluble vitamin, which means we can store it. It has several important functions. It's crucial for vision, is the most important one people know about. It's an essential component of rhodopsin, a protein that absorbs light in the retinal receptors. And again, there's a good link through there to a fact sheet on vitamin A of health professionals. And there's a molecule. Notice this long chain of carbon atoms with double bonds in it, which is very much like a lipid chain, like a fat. So this is why it's fat soluble and not water soluble. So we can store it in our livers. We need special mechanisms for moving around the body, which aren't part of this lecture, but again, you can read about these in any good nutrition textbook. There are two forms of vitamin A. Preformed vitamin A, retinol and its esterified form retinol ester, and provitamin A carotenoids. Preformed vitamin A is found in foods from animal sources, including dairy products, fish, meat, especially liver. Nutritionally, the most important provitamin A carotenoid is beta-carotene, which we're going to talk about quite a lot. Yeah, so sources of vitamin A. As retinol in foods from animal sources, liver, whole milk, cheese, and butter, things we've talked about. As carotenoids in food from plant sources, carrots, dark green leafy vegetables, and orange-coloured fruits. Beta-carotene is the most common carotenoid. It's converted into retinol in the body. It's not a complete conversion. 6 milligrams of beta-carotene is converted into 1 milligram of retinol. But most people have plenty of this in their diet, as I said before. A little bit of biochemistry. As beta-carotene gets hydrolyzed into two retinol molecules, which are effectively identical. I've shown them as mirror images, literal mirror images in this case. We will look at this much more when we look at food colours. We'll talk about carotenoids, which are the yellow, orange and red pigments synthesized by plants. Beta-carotene is the most important. Among other things, it is the molecule that makes modern carrots orange. They didn't used to be, again more later. And in the body, this hydrolysis process takes place. So as we mentioned in the previous slide, it's not completely as efficient as is suggested here. Not all carotenoids are provitamin A, so there's a list highlighted there of ones which are beta-carotene, alpha-carotene, and beta-cryptoxanthin. Then there's a list which are non-provitamin A, such as lutein, zeaxanthin, and lycopene, some of which also have important roles in nutrition and health. For example, lycopene, the molecule that makes tomatoes red, is linked to reducing the rate of age-related macular degeneration in older people. And there's a link there to, there's a link in the notes to a chapter which you can read if you're interested. So source of vitamin A. Red palm oil is being cold pressed from the fruit of the oil palm, is bottled as cooking oil, in addition to other uses such as being blended in mayonnaise and vegetable oil, very high in retinol equivalents. I suspect it's not a big part of many people's diets, but no, carrots. Carrots are pretty good. So when your granny or your mother told you to eat carrots because they were good for your eyes, this was good advice. Also mentioned the almost ubiquitous in advice about nutrition, dark green leafy vegetables. Retinol equivalents, how we measure these things. Vitamin A intakes and requirements are generally expressed in terms of retinol equivalents, RE. 1 RE is defined as the biological activity associated with 1 gram of all trans retinol. So it's a specific measurement based on a specific amount of retinol. It takes into account the different activities and variable absorption of preformed vitamin, provitamin A carotenoids. It is a widely accepted unit. These data are taken from a government report on the toxicity of vitamin A, which if you're interested you can have a skim, but I wouldn't worry too much about the details. It's just the concepts are important. On the subject of toxicity, vitamin A toxicity is why you really shouldn't eat polar bear liver. Hypervitaminosis or vitamin A toxicity occurs when consuming excessive amounts of vitamin A. It is pretty rare, but there may be some historical examples which we'll see in a moment. Condition may be acute or chronic. So acute, something which happens immediately; chronic, something which happens over a lengthy period of time. Acute toxicity occurs after consuming large amounts of vitamin A over a short period of time, typically within a few hours or days. Chronic toxicity occurs when large amounts of vitamin A build up in the body over a long period of time, and symptoms include change in vision, bone pain, skin changes, and chronic toxicity can lead to liver damage and increased pressure on the brain. Okay, there's a word there, erythrema, that's the Greek for dry eyes. Another word there, ination, which effectively means tiredness. I feel a bit innated today. Okay, moving on. So the polar bear has a different view of this situation. Vitamin A, which is fat soluble, is stored in the liver. As the food predator chain is ascended, the amount stored increases bioaccumulation, which I'm sure you've heard of before. So eating a relatively small amount of polar bear liver may prove toxic. It contains very large amounts. Must have a couple of orders of magnitude, several orders of magnitude more than we'll find in the human liver, and it is toxic. But we'll notice the one for huskies as well, which we'll come back to in a second. So 10,000, so that's 20 times as much as in the human liver. Which takes us to Douglas Morrison. Obviously there's no polar bears in the Antarctica, which was where Morrison is most famed for. There's a link there to a Guardian article about the unsung hero of Antarctica. He's not that unsung. This is a very good book, which I'm actually listening to the audio book of at the moment, but I digress. So Douglas Morrison's Australian Antarctica expedition, which lasted from 1911 to 1940, was a very ambitious project with teams of explorers seeking to establish permanent bases to live through the long Antarctic night. In warmer weather, Morrison with Swiss skier Xavier Mertz and Army officer Belgrave Ninnis headed out from base camp at Commonwealth Bay into the vast empty wilderness. As they travelled snowy ice fields with sledges pulled by dogs, Ninnis and his sledge plunged fatally into a crevice. Ninnis died and he took most of the expedition's food with him. So the survivors resorted to eating their sled dogs, another carnivore that accumulates vitamin A in its liver. Met became weak and delirious and eventually died. Morrison survived and trekked back 100 miles on his own in a condition which well illustrated by this picture here. In the book he talks about the home of the blizzard, so 80 mile an hour blizzards gusting up to 200 mile an hour were not uncommon in that particular area. Morrison survived. Now it's been hypothesized that some of his symptoms may have arisen from vitamin A poisoning. Other possible explanations include scurvy or maybe just plain starvation. So there's some links there. There's a link to the Guardian article, and the notes is a link to what is actually quite a good Wikipedia article on Morrison, if you're interested. So hyperkeratosis is quite rare. Excess intake of beta-carotene is hyperkeratosis, which can result in staining of the skin a yellow-orange colour, but it's otherwise benign. It's sometimes seen in people who drink very large amounts of carrot juice, and other causes are possible. Okay, we'll move on rapidly from that. Right, that's all. Thanks for listening.